Welcome to Preserving for You. This series will discuss research-backed home food preservation methods. I'm Terry James.
I'm Joanne Van.
And we're with the Arkansas Cooperative Extension Service of the University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture. Today we're going to be making blackberry jam, which falls into the sweet spread category. We will be using a boiling water bath canner to process this. So Joanne, tell us a little bit about what is boiling water bath canners?
Well, really you have two methods for processing foods, the boiling water bath canning method or pressure canning. And the way you decide which to use is based on the acid in the food. So for high acid foods like fruits, tomatoes, pickles, jams, jellies, and other preserves, you want to use the boiling water bath method. With this method, the jars of food are heated, they're covered completely with boiling water. So that makes sure that they are processed safely. Sweet spreads, which is what blackberry jam is a thickened or jellied product, and it's preserved by the sugar that's in it. So this includes jellies, jams, preserves, conserves, and marmalades. Jams are made by cooking crushed or chopped fruit and then adding sugar to it. They're thick and they tend to hold their shape, but they're less firm than jelly. But the shape of the fruit is not retained when making a jam. So that's some of the key differences. With sweet spreads, you want to be sure to do just small batches. If you try to double the batch, it may not gel properly.
It could be very bad and very sad at that point.
Yes, it's a lot of work making these products. So you want to make sure you follow safe and best practices so that it does perform the way you want it to.
So today we've got 4 key ingredients, and this is very important for everyone that's going to be doing our recipes. Our first ingredient that we're going to be utilizing, of course, is the fruit. Fruit provides a characteristic color and flavor to the jellied product. It furnishes at least part of the pectin and the acid needed for a gel to form. It should be just at the ripe stage of the best natural color and the flavor. Fruits of irregular size and shape can be used as long as they are good quality, since they will be cut up or they're going to be mashed or made into juice. Fresh fruits and juices, as well as commercially canned or frozen fruit juice, can be used with commercially prepared powdered or liquid pectin. So, if you're using commercially canned or frozen products, select those that have no added sugar. It's best if canned fruits are canned in their own juice, because commercially canned for frozen products are made from fully ripe fruit, which are lower in pectin than underripe fruit. Pectin must be added. If you can or freeze your own fruit or fruit juice, use some slightly underripe fruit. Then, if the fruit naturally contains adequate pectin, more will have to be added to products made from that juice. If you're going to can fruit in its own juice, do not add sugar, or if you do, note on each jar how much sugar it contains. Then you can allow for that sugar in the jelly recipe. Pectin, this is important. You have powdered pectin or liquid pectin boxes. This is what causes the fruit to gel. Some kinds of fruits have enough natural pectin to make high quality products, so then you don't have to add the pectin. But others require added pectin, especially if they are used for making jellies, which should be firm enough to hold their shape. And I know I like my jelly to have a little bit of a shape. The highest quality pectin is found in just ripe fruit. Pectin from underripe or overripe fruit will not form a gel. The order of combining the ingredients also depends on the type of pectin, powdered or liquid used. Complete directions for a variety of fruits are provided with the packaged pectin. It requires less cooking. It generally gives a larger yield. It has more natural fruit flavors too. In addition, adding that added pectin eliminates the need to test the hot jellies and the jams for proper gelling. I like that step alone, so that's why I usually will use pectin.
The third key ingredient is your acid. Acid is needed for that gel to form, for the flavor, but also to decrease the pH of the food below 4.6, making it safe to use our boiling water canning method. The acid content varies between fruits, and it is higher in the underripe stage. So again, choosing those ripe fruits are very important. If a fruit does not naturally have enough acid to it, you may see recipes that say add lemon juice or citric acid. The sugar must be in the proper proportion with the pectin and the acid to make a good gel. The sugar is the preservative, so remember that's what's making it safe and preventing microbial growth. And it also contributes to the taste because we love that sweet jam. Never cut down on the amount of sugar a recipe calls for. For reduced sugar recipes, follow processes on modified sugar pectin, which is available, or directions in the So Easy to Preserve canning book. Now, when choosing your sugar, granulated white sugar is actually the preferred product for homemade gelled products. Sweeteners such as brown sugar, sorghum, and molasses are not recommended since their strong flavors overpower the fruit and their sweetness varies. Another key thing to remember is that sugar is what helps keep the product safe and prevents microbial growth. So do not substitute artificial sweeteners in a regular sugar recipe. If you need more assistance with those reduced sugar recipes, then definitely follow So Easy to Preserve.
So one thing we want you to be aware of is to look for your best sources for instructions for home canning. A few of those include the following. We have the recent published booklets that are prepared by the Cooperative Extension Service, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, also called USDA, major manufacturers of home canning equipment, or other reliable professionals. Avoid following the home canning advice of untrained celebrities, old cookbooks, back to nature publications, and out-of-date home canning leaflets. Some potentially dangerous instructions can be found in old official publications. Be sure you have the latest publications based on current research. We recommend the National Center for Home Food Preservation website, the So Easy to Preserve by the University of Georgia Cooperative Extension Service, and the USDA Complete Guide to Home Canning, which is available as a free download. And those of you that have internet and can do that, you can get it for free. So today we're going to be making blackberry jam with powdered pectin since we are using previously frozen blackberries. We will follow the pectin manufacturer's recipes for the ingredients and the processing time. We're going to need 5 cups of crushed blackberries, 1 package of powdered pectin, 7 cups of sugar, a half a teaspoon of butter, and this recipe will yield about 9 cups of prepared jams, which actually is one of our nice little half-pint jars. So Joanne, we got to have some items to work with. What are we going to do?
Yeah, when you're preserving, it's always great to gather all your equipment before you start. So you want to start with a stock pot that is large enough to hold the contents of your recipe, and because we're going to boil this very briskly, you need a little extra space, so make sure you choose a stock pot that's large enough. A large stirring spoon, which Terry is showing you, so that you have enough room above the pot not to burn your arm, because you are going to do a lot of continuous stirring in here. You will need a spatula for scraping the side of the pot. You will need measuring spoons, measuring cups, and then for crushing your blackberries, you have the choice of a potato masher or the meat crumbler. I actually prefer this one, so we're going to use it today. Cutting boards are great. You can either use them to do the trimming that we'll talk about later when we talk about prepping the fruit, or measuring overs, because you don't want to measure over your container that you're going to be putting your finished product in. Kitchen shears are also great. When you're talking about using dish towels, you'll need a lot, but choose the older ones because blackberries will stain just about anything they touch. So we recommend using the older ones. Keep a variety of mixing bowls. You're going to need several different things for this recipe. You're also going to need your jars, which Terry is going to talk more about, canning lids, a jar lifter, a lid wand, and then a bubble releaser headspace tool, a funnel for filling the jars, and then of course your water bath canner with a rack. So for today, we are using a larger water bath canner. You can use any stock pot that is large enough to hold the amount for your recipe. Today, we're going to need 9 half-pint jars. It needs a rack in there so that the water can flow completely around those jars while it's covered in water. And it doesn't have to be anything special or particular. There's an example on the corner of one type of rack. A trivet, a silicone trivet, also works.
These are really cool. I like mine.
Yeah, and they store. One of the things I love about the silicone ones is they're much easier to store.
They are easy to store compared to a full rack.
And they don't rust either. So you'll need some type of rack in there. And then it also has to have a tight fitting lid. That helps conserve the heat and also make sure that it stays at the proper temperature. Again, keeping the jars off the bottom of the canner is a big priority so that that water can roll freely under there. Terry, have I forgotten anything? Oh, the diameter of the burners. That's something we often don't think about. When you're choosing your stock pot to use as your canner, you do not want your pot more than 4 inches in diameter than the size of the burner. If it's more than that, those jars may not process all the way through. There will be cooler spots in the canner. So check that too. But otherwise, find a good metal pot, put a rack in there, and you're ready to go once the lid's on.
Fun. So guess what? We're ready to start getting our items together to actually prepare our recipe today. So we want to prepare with our jars. It's important that you have the proper jars. We recommend a mason type jars that are heat tempered for home canning are best. Commercial mayonnaise are jars that are purchased with foods like tomato sauce, peanut butter, salad dressing. They may not seal with home canning lids, even though they seem to fit. They're not manufactured for high temperatures or long processing in home canning, so it's very important that you use a canning jar. Also, one of the things to think about is that they were made not for necessarily being reused for canning, and therefore, if you do process them with canning product in it, they may break, especially in a pressure canner, and I do not want to see that happen. So home canning jars come in a variety of sizes, as we mentioned, from the half pint, which is what we're going to be utilizing today, all the way up to a half-gallon size jars. Pints and quarts are the most commonly recommended. Jars come in a regular and wide mouth, and these are the regular. You want to also examine the jars and discard those that have nicks, cracks, and rough edges. Run your fingers around the tops, check them to see if you have any problems with that. Also, these defects will not permit the airtight seal in the jar, and the food may cause spoilage, which can result. We don't want that to happen. All canning jars should be washed in soapy water, rinsed well, and then kept hot. We've been keeping our jars that we're going to utilize today in our pot as we've been getting the water heated up. The jars that will be filled with food and processed for less than 10 minutes in a boiling water bath canner need to be sterilized. For instructions for sterilizing jars, see So Easy to Preserve or the National Center for Home Food Preservation. Because the processing time is 10 minutes, we do not have to sterilize our jars that we're using. They are being warmed, as I mentioned, and that's what we're going to use for our jam. So we're getting excited about this. Are you ready, Joanne?
I am, but let's talk about our lids first. You can't just use any lid you want. So the most tested and recommended is this 2-piece metal lid system. It has a metal flat piece with a sealing compound on here. They are sold to fit regular and wide mouth glass canning jars. You want to make sure that if you are reusing your ring, that it's not rusted, because these can be used more than once. However, your flat piece should only be used once for canning. If you think about it, this is going to go on, it's going to vacuum seal down. When you break that seal to open your product, it warps the lid, and so you do not want to use this more than once for canning. If you want to use it for storing something, that's fine, but one time only for canning. If you buy these in a box, they usually come in boxes of 12, you want to store them in a cool, dry location, and they can stay good up to 5 years from the date of manufacture. However, over time, the sealing compound will degrade and the lid may fail, and we all know we don't like that.
No.
Who wants to have failed lids when we're working on this much product? So you want to make sure that you store these well, don't reuse them more than once, and then make sure when you wash your rings that they do not rust so that you can reuse them. All right, and then what about those reusables?
That's something that's new to me. I had not used one of those, and I'm thrilled that you were able to find some. This is a new product that has come out, and we're very excited that they have done some research on it. So Joanne, tell me, what exactly is that kind of a lid?
Okay, so this is a multi-use lid. It can be used more than once as opposed to the metal flat. It's plastic top, it has a gasket. Now, you still will need the ring in order to utilize this type of lid. And the current research does suggest that if this is used properly, following the manufacturer's directions explicitly, they are safe for home canning. So you want to make sure you follow exactly the steps that are listed from whichever manufacturer you choose to buy them from. You'll place them. You'll use the ring to tighten it, and then the manufacturer will give you instructions about how much to tighten, when to tighten, because it is a little different than just those two-piece metal. So if you're looking for a more reusable option, that would work for you. In either case, once you are finished cooling your product, which we'll talk about at the end, you are going to remove that ring.
So what do we got to do now? Step number 2. We're now going to prepare the fruit. So one of the things we want you to think about, you need to sort and wash fully ripe berries and remove any stems or caps. You're going to want to crush your berries using a masher. As Joanne said, you could use this one, but she's going to use the other masher. If they are seedy, you may want to put them into a food mill, which we happen to have here, or run them through a sieve. That'll help to eliminate some of the seeds. You're going to measure your crushed berries using a dry measuring cup and leveling it off. A variety that we have today happens to actually be one of them that we have grown here in Arkansas. It's provided by Randy Forst. They are the Ouachita variety. This is an Arkansas variety developed by Dr. John Clark. The Ouachita variety is a thornless blackberry with very erect canes, and it was released in 2003. They are larger than the Navajo, but not as large as an Apache variety. They have an average sugar or percentage up to 10 to 11%. And this variety ripens in mid-June and the fruits for about 5 weeks. In 2020, the Ouachita Blackberry received the Outstanding Fruit Cultivar Award from the Fruit Breeding Professional Interest Group of the American Society of Horticulture Science. So when you are buying, here's some tips. You want to select berries that are uniformly black. They're firm and they're plump. As we mentioned, they do have stains, and one of the things, be mindful if there's stains in the paperboard containers, because that could be evidence of crushed berries. The Arkansas fresh blackberries are available from late May through July. Since blackberries turn black before they're fully ripe, take care to choose only firm, fully ripe fruit. Berries from wild and thorny cultivated types should be glossy black, while berries from cultivated thornless types should be a dull black. Soft blackberries, too, we want you to remove. Those could be very soft, but also you want to watch that you're having any leaves and stems and remove them from your product. Also, there's sometimes critters, so make sure you get those insects out. That's why you wash. Also, soft or damp berries should be used as soon as possible. Blackberries should not be washed until just before being used. It's very important. It changes the texture of the skin. If your berries are damp, gently dry them on a paper towel. Store those blackberries uncovered in a shallow container in the refrigerator for 1 to 2 days.
We've actually pre-measured quite a bit of our sugar for today, just to save us a little time. We're going to measure in the last cup. You want to use a dry measuring cup. And then level that off. Have a little clump in there. All right, and then we're going to add that to our already measured out sugar.
So we've measured out our berries. So this is the ones that we have. This is the last cup going in. We have our full amount that's going to go in, and it's now ready to go into our actual pot.
Okay, so we're going to add our berries, and then our next step is to stir in our pectin. And then the butter is to prevent foaming. And it's just a small amount. So we're going to place on high heat, stirring constantly Bring quickly to a full boil with bubbles over the entire surface.
I don't know about you, Joanne, but this takes time to get this thing to boil, you know.
It does, and stirring constantly is necessary to prevent all that sugary sweetness from sticking to the bottom.
But it's worth it in the end.
It is worth it in the end. There's nothing like homemade jams and jellies. Oh, Terry, that's smelling really great.
I think so. I think we're just about ready for the next fun step. So we're going to add the sugar and continue stirring and heat again to a full bubbling boil. So bring in that sugar. Yum. How many cups did we add?
I believe it was 7.
Wow.
So it should be very sweet.
One of the things to be mindful of, even though we dumped in the sugar, it has to come back to a boil, and that's when you start your count for 1 minute. When we talk about timers, you can utilize your phone. You can use a timer on the stove if you have one. You can use an actual kitchen timer, but just be aware, don't start timing until it comes back to that full boil, and then start your time for 1 minute. So Joanne, what are we going to use? You got your timer?
I do have my timer, but we're not quite there yet.
No, it's not there yet.
It's important to follow the instructions on this very closely because you can either undercook the pectin or overcook it, and both of those affect your gel quality.
It was exciting. We had it boiling a minute. Now I want it to come back.
Yes. The waiting is the worst part on any jams and jellies. I can't wait till we get to the biscuit tasting later.
I know. I know some folks are thinking I'm kind of strange because I'm able actually to touch the pot, but this is an induction pot. So the difference of this is that it doesn't get the whole pot hot. I can still hold the handle safely, but be mindful. This is, if you're doing it at home and have a regular cook stove and have your pots, make sure you have your pot holders and be careful because of the heat. At the same time, there is a lot of popping, and those pops have little bits of product that could actually burn you. So make sure that we said have the proper size pots to work with.
Yeah, and this is just right. We have just enough space for it to boil like it needs to, but also not have it popping in our face.
That's right. And we're slowly watching for it. It's going to be a few more minutes, Joanne, until we can actually get to the time. Okay, so Joanne, we got this thing going to a nice, good, as some of us have said, an angry boil, and we want it to boil hard for at least 1 more minute. So you got your timer going?
I do have the timer going, Terry.
All right, we want to keep stirring because one of the things you do not want is for this stuff to stick. So we'll boil and go for 1 minute and keep stirring. When we get done with that 1 minute, guess what, Joanne? We're going to be ready.
Yep, it'll be time to skim the foam, which there shouldn't be as much since we did add the optional butter.
Yeah, now they do show bubbles, but once it settles down, those bubbles should kind of settle away. So let's check and see what it looks like in less than a minute, all right?
About 20 seconds left.
All right. Okay, so we have got this done with its actual cooking time, and guess what, Joanne? I think we can remove it from the heat, and we can actually get ready to start skimming the foam, you think?
That's right. You want to remove it from heat as soon as you can after that 1 moment is over, that 1 minute, so that it doesn't continue to cook the pectin. And now what we're looking for is how much foam, and because we added the butter, there's actually really not that much.
Really, there is, I mean, it is going down to almost nothing. However, if you do have foam, it's very important that you do remove the foam, because if it's left in there, it does not cause a nice, pleasing effect. Some people say the aesthetics of it are just something you don't like. For items that you're going to be entering in fair competitions, those items, they could be scored lower, so it's important that you remove the foam. What you can utilize for that is use your spoon and just lightly go into your pot and just slowly remove some of the foam that's accumulated. Doesn't take much. You kind of just push the foam to one side and lift out the foam pieces.
And it's just a little bit lighter color with more bubbles in it. When we talk about foam, that's what we're referring to.
I think we were lucky with the butter. It's making it.
It's very little foam.
So we're not going to lose much product at all.
And that's another advantage to that is we want as much yield as possible to get the very most product out of our blackberries, especially when you're home growing them. You don't want to waste any.
That's right. But sometimes some folks are kind of concerned because we are adding a little bit of dairy into a product. Sometimes it may have just a little bit of an off taste. Also, you need to be mindful. Some individuals may have a lactose intolerance, so you need to let them be aware that you did add some butter to this product, especially if you're taking these products and you're going to be selling them at farmers markets or giving them away as gifts. People need to be aware of what you have in your different ingredients. So Joanne, you think we should begin to start filling?
I think we're ready.
All right, let's get our jars out of the water bath canner.
So we've already started step 5, pouring the jam or jelly. I actually prefer to ladle. And we're to an extremely important step of measuring headspace. The headspace is the amount left between the food and the lid. And each type of food has a different headspace requirement that's been researched to determine that the right amount of air is left in, that there's not too much gap. For sweet spreads, that headspace is 1/4 inch. So Terry is demonstrating here, using our headspace tool, the correct level for the amount that's supposed to go in there. If there's too much, you take some out. If you have not enough, then you add just a little bit more. How do these look, Terry?
We've got quite a few that are just about at the right spot, but then a few just need a few more drips. But at the same time, let's just see what we got as we fill up a few more jars, and then we'll balance it all out. At the same time, we got to also make sure that we get some of the bubbles out, and air bubbles.
That's right. So the next thing Terry's going to show you is how to remove those air bubbles. If you don't do this step, when those bubbles rise to the surface, it can cause your seals not to form, and then you've got a jar that's not going to have that nice vacuum seal on there. Also, as you remove the air bubbles, it may mean that you have to add more product to it because those bubbles have been taking up space. When you remove them, now you need to add just a little bit more.
An example being, I just did this one and it dropped just a little bit, so we're going to need to be adding a few more. But before we do that, let's get these other ones filled up, okay? So, I'm going to move that around, Joanne, so that we can get down to this.
Excellent.
We got about 3 more jars that we want to get filled.
Oh,
the funnel is extremely important to utilize as you're filling your jars because you want to try to prevent getting as much product around the tops of your rims of your jars and also going on the sides. So having a wide mouth funnel is very crucial to this. You can get those at most of the kitchen centers and things like that that'll have these type of funnels.
And it looks like we're going to come out really close on our yield. Our recipe said that it would yield 9 half pints. Looks like we're on number 8.
Think we're going to make it to the 9?
We're going to be really close.
Oh, what are we going to do? I wanted to lick the pot.
We are going to scrape that and get as much of that yummy goodness as we possibly can.
One of the things too, if you don't have it all the way, a jar that fills all the way to the top and you're short on headspace and all, that's the jar that you can actually utilize and be able to enjoy once you're done with doing your canning. And what we're going to have today is we're going to actually enjoy some of it with our biscuits that we have prepared. At the same time, that jar, because it's not going to be water bath, it needs to go into the refrigerator, and that's the one that you're going to use up the soonest.
Okay, so it looks like we need to check our headspace and add a little bit because we are getting close to the end. We might not have quite enough to get the right headspace on that last jar.
So we've got this jar, it's coming in at the correct headspace, so this one's a good to go. We're going to be able to put the lids and the rings on it.
Okay.
But as we do that, it's very important because we have been filling the jars, they get these particles and bits on top of the tops of the jars, so that's why it's important to have a damp cloth that you can go around and wipe that top. Some individuals in the past have said they take a dampened one with some vinegar. That has not been actually shown to be research-based, but that is something that grandmas used to do for many, many years. However, it's not a research thing that we have. They just say use a damp cloth and wipe the top.
And what you're doing is removing that food residue so that the seal can properly form. You don't want even a slight amount with a pinhole in your seal because it can allow that oxygen back in.
Right. And when you do put your lids on, tighten them to just fingertip tight, okay? So that one will be ready to go into the water bath canner. This one is going to be short. We may be utilizing it as the one that we're going to be using to fill some of our other jars with. Okay. So a little bit more into that one. Let's go a little bit more, Joanne.
And I think we're going to get a great gel formation on this. It is already getting very thick and gelled.
We're down to step number 7, which is the processing of it. So for jams, you're going to utilize the boiling water bath for 10 minutes. Each food has its own processing time, and these processing times are based on research that tells how long the product must be heated so that all of the food in the jars has reached the temperature needed to destroy dangerous microorganisms. The length of time required varies with the denseness of the food and its packing liquid. Also, don't forget that pH. Because these processing times are based on research, they should be followed exactly. Underprocessing can result in spoiled food, while overprocessing results in overcooked food. Water should cover the jars by at least 1 inch, and we made sure that we're going to cover them at least by 1 inch. Depending on the type of the recipe and the pectin used, you're going to be following the processing time stated by the pectin manufacturer. For the recipe that we use today, the manufacturer says to process for 10 minutes. We'll follow the 10-minute processing time to ensure that the jam sets. So we're down to step number 8. We're into cooling. What you need to do first is place a clean towel on your counter. It's important to have a barrier between the jars and the counters, especially to prevent jars from cracking if placed on stone counters such as granite, quartz, and corian. So, Joanne, you going to help me get those jars out of that canner? Oh my goodness, it is nice and hot and going. So one of the things you want to do is you want to lift the jars from the canters. You need to go straight up and over to the towel and then straight down. You want to make sure you do not tilt jars to remove the excess water. After processing, you want to remove the jars from the canner and allow to cool for 12 to 24 hours undisturbed while they're sitting there, and you can sometimes hear a pop indicating that the jar is sealing. That's one of my favorite events. Also, do not retighten the screw bands. Let those jars cool 12 to 24 hours and then check the seal. Once the jars are completely cool, check for the seal and follow the lid manufacturer's directions for determining the vacuum seals. When you have the two-piece metal lids, the flat lid should be curved downward and should not move if the center is pressed with a finger. Once the screw band is removed, you also should be able to tell if the flat lid is sealed in place. Oh, I heard a pop.
I heard a pop.
If a jar is not sealed, but whoa!
There's another one.
They're going to say we're silly as we hear these pops. Anyway, let them cool for 24 hours, and if they don't seal, then you need to refrigerate so that the unspoiled food is in the refrigerator and eat it within 2 to 3 days or so. Other options, if it has been longer than 24 hours, if it has been less than 24, you can reprocess, or you could freeze the item. If liquid has been lost from sealed jars, do not open them to replace it. Simply plan to use these first. The food not covered by the liquid may discolor, but the food is safe if the jar was processed correctly. It is sealed and the liquid is only a little lower than the food. If a large amount of liquid is missing, then the food may be underprocessed and unsafe if the liquid came out of the jar early in the processing time. So Joanne, what do you think?
I am loving all the pops that we're hearing. You know, we really want those seals to form.
They're doing it.
All right, Terry, we're to that final moment where we get to see our product and how wonderful it is. You can see that it has a uniform consistency and it's thick, but it's still spreadable, and we're about to enjoy some on a homemade biscuit. Now, let's talk about storing our jars. It's a best practice to remove the screw bands for storage. Then once they're removed, you want to wash them, dry them, and keep it in a clean, dry area. If lids are properly prepped and tested, recipe is followed, lids on the jar should remain sealed for many years, but for best quality and safety, we also want you to use that within 1 year. What we will do now is wash and rinse any residue that's remaining on these jars after they've cooled. And then we will label. You want to show what the contents are, so we would label this blackberry jam. You would put the date on there And then if you did more than one canner load, you also want to put a batch number on them. That way, if there's a problem with one of them later, you can go and take out the other parts of that batch instead of having to question, well, was this batch 1 and that batch 2? So for safety, put a batch number on there if you do it more than one batch a day. If you're just doing one batch a day, then your date is good enough. Avoid storing these near hot pipes, direct sunlight. You want to keep them in a temperature of 50 to 70 degrees is best. And then watch for dampness. You do not want to store these anywhere where it'll be damp because the metal lids can corrode and that could weaken or break the seal. Now, people ask me sometimes about what happens if they were out in a building and they froze. It does not affect the safety of the item unless the seal is broken. However, if it does freeze, it's not going to be nearly as tasty.
No.
So it's better to just go ahead and plan ahead, have a good place to store these out of heat, out of cold, keep them in a good temperature, out of direct sunlight, because your nutrition and your quality can erode very fast when they're not stored properly.
It's very important. And for the amount of time and the work that you've put into it, you want to be able to enjoy this. Also, to share them with other individuals. So Joanne, do you think we're just about to that point?
We're ready to wrap up. Our blackberry jam turned out beautiful. We want to thank you for watching today. If you have more questions about food preservation, go to our website. It's uaex.uada.edu. On there, you can find a link to each county office. We have agents that can help you in each area, so regardless of what county you're watching from. But also on our website are more food preservation tips, tricks, recipes, and we look forward to having you join us again for the next one in our series. You can also find fact sheets and publications about food preservation and other things about growing if you wanted to grow these Ouachita variety blackberries.
That's right. Thank you for joining us today.